Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 5, Episode 16, The Man Who Saw the Alligators, written by David Chase and directed by Corey Allen. This extra long episode begins with a man getting out of prison, a returning George Loros as a returning character, Anthony Boy Gaglio, which is a little odd as we last saw him get shot and presumably killed in the double episode To Protect and Serve. It could be that he survived multiple gunshot wounds, then served only a few years for kidnap, assault and attempted murder. But it's also not something that particularly bothers me, as continuity didn't really exist at this time, and people really didn't care about canon. The only thing that bothers me is that George Loros had already appeared as a different character since his first appearance as Anthony Boy, so it's not entirely clear here who exactly he's supposed to be. And the zoom in on his face makes me think that maybe they had planned to show a flashback to his earlier episode, but for some reason didn't. We instead cut to Rocky helping Jim in his trailer as Jim recovers from some painful dental work. Rocky takes a call from Adriana Danielli, Jim's accountant, keeping him up to date with his IRS audit that's about to take place. And he gets a visit from Dennis, who tells him about Anthony Boy's release and how Tony holds Jim personally responsible for the liver damage caused as a result of getting shot by the cops. Jim doesn't really care about any of this due to the drugs he's on for the pain, so he takes a nap. Meanwhile, Tony's brother, Richie, comes to collect him and tries to dissuade him from pursuing his vendetta. But even their elderly mother can't put him off.
Tony, please, come home. Hasn't this family had enough trouble yet?
Richie tells Tony that boss Joe Manette has a job offer for Tony, but even this isn't enough to put him off his revenge tour of Southern California. We then cut to Joe Manette as he receives news that Tony isn't coming back to New York, and we find out the job offer was actually to prop up the foundations of a new off-ramp.
Get the chin in here. Now!
We then cut to Tony reconnecting with his former partner, Sil.
That was a great dinner.
Played by a returning Luke Andreas. He's left the life and settled down with a new girl and a couple of stepkids. Tony manages to convince Sil to help him by threatening to kill one of those kids, which is just the start of the episode's demonstration of the putrefying effects of revenge.
We've been together too long for you to start acting like this. You're coming down there.
No, I'm not.
Sil has turned his life around after prison, is happy and has no desire to return to a life of crime. But Tony just doesn't care, because he wants what he wants, which is exactly what got him caught the last time around. It's a brilliantly structured opening with all of the pieces in just the right place. Jim is told immediately, but unable to act. Tony is shown to be single-minded in his revenge, which might actually prolong his life with the mob targeting him, and poor Sil is dragged back into the underworld by his so-called friend. The next day, with Jim more compos mentis, he spots a couple of Manette's goons outside his trailer and, not remembering what Tony Boy looked like, confronts them before they take off.
Better travel.
Plus, he has bigger problems as Adriana is ready to check on his paperwork. Angel arrives at Rocky's where the pre-audit is taking place and is trying to scam money out of Jim. Failing to do so, he sneaks into Jim's trailer, orders food and drink, and is running up his phone bill when Tony and Sil arrive, forcing him to immediately confess that Jim has gone to Adriana's cabin.
He's in Lake Arrowhead. He's in Lake Arrowhead!
Luckily, Sil is able to talk Tony out of killing Angel, and before they head out to find where Jim is, they stop at Tony's cousin's, where, unbeknownst to him, his mother and brother are staying, allowing Richie to keep tabs on him and report back to Minette. At Adriana's cabin, Jim is despondent to find out he can't claim for any of his expenses, and things only get worse when Angel turns up to warn him about what's coming. But it might be too late, though, as Tony and Sil arrive while the three of them are at the cabin, and all Adriana has to protect them is a pellet gun.
You gotta be kidding.
Before Jim can get Adriana to safety, Angel makes his own escape attempt, but is quickly caught by Sil. With all three now Tony's prisoners, things look pretty bleak for them. That is until Minette's goons show up. Except with Jim, Angel and Adriana as potential witnesses, the goons are no longer going to be their saviours. Richie is also with the goons, which breaks Tony's heart, right before Sil breaks a window as he's shot. Pinned down, with Tony having lost all control, and down to one gun, Jim takes charge and sets Angel's car on fire to draw attention to the standoff, which is the least of what Angel deserves. And as the goons take off and Angel, Jim and Adriana try to make their escape, Tony is still hell-bent on finishing his revenge mission, until he sees Richie and takes a shot at him, giving Jim the chance he needs to jump Tony. In the epilogue, Jim's audit is going as well as can be expected, until Angel shows up with a few fellow conmen, blowing the whole thing.
These them suckers that think they've been teleported to Monaco.
There are actually two versions of this episode. A full-length 1 hour and 15-minute version and a syndicated 50-minute version. And to be honest, I think the shorter version is better. The extended scenes of Tony and Sil's reunion is probably better in the longer version, as we get to see more of what Sil is giving up. But other than that, the other scenes, the shorter version cuts, are character scenes of Tony and Sil that might well have inspired Quentin Tarantino when he was writing Pulp Fiction.
Guys, I don't want to go near no more tacos and chili dogs and sandwiches.
But aren't really missed. And Minette convincing Richie to go with his goons to kill Tony, which I don't actually think are needed. While we do get a great performance out of Joseph Cirola as Minette, it's a long scene, nigh on 10 minutes, that really sucks the urgency and tension out of Jim's situation. The episode itself is excellent though. A simple revenge story that raises important questions about the destructiveness of revenge, particularly for Sil, and how even though Tony was at a point where he had nothing to lose, willing to kill Jim or die trying, everyone around him was suffering as a result of his selfishness. He carried out the crime that got him shot and imprisoned. His willingness to commit murder, not anything Jim did, and his pathological desire for revenge results in his best friend and his brother suffering the same fate. The acting is brilliant throughout, with Loros giving a credibly unhinged performance as Tony, and Andreas' Sil drawing sympathy as he casts aside his second chance, even though his somewhat amoral attitude to murder should be terrifying.
Hey, Tony, can we get on with it? I want to get back home, huh?
I would say that I would have much preferred if this script hadn't been produced as part of the main series, but instead as one of the reunion TV movies, as I think the timeline and events of the plot would have fitted more perfectly into that later period. It would have given Tony even longer to stew on what happened to him, Jim longer to forget, and Sil longer to be happy, giving him the chance to have his own family, and even more to lose, and it would have made Tony's sentence not feel improbably short. Obviously, they didn't know they would even be doing reunion movies when this was made, but that really would have made this a perfect episode. For me, though, this is still a sensational episode, so it's another 5 out of 5 for me. Thank you. Goodbye.